Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razan Pereira. Amidst lower than expectation collection through goods and services tax, the centre has sought suggestions from the states on rates, including those of compensation cess and on exemption list beside others for the next GST Council meeting. According to a statement from the centre to the states, the discussion on revenue position is critical as lower GST and compensation cess collections have been a matter of concern in the last few months. The 38th meeting of the GST Council will take place during the second fortnight of the current month. Meanwhile, sharpening his attack on the union government for the delay in the payment of goods and services tax compensation to Kerala, Finance Minister T.M. Thomas Isaac has said that the state government is seriously considering legal recourse to secure the pending amount from the centre. Finance ministers of 4 other states too urged the union government to clear dues towards compensation from the implementation of the GST as they are facing financial difficulty. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyse the tussle between the centre and the states with regards to the GST. Joining me on the programme today are Bhanuchandar Nagarajan, former consultant, the World Bank, Dr. P. Pulla Rao, economist, and K. Badrinath, senior journalist. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Bhanu, let me begin the program with you. Let's first try and analyze and look at what the problem is as far as the GST is concerned between the centre and the states.
But when the GST was enacted in 2017, the chief economic advisor said that the revenue neutral rate was going to be around 15 to 15.5%. Right now, the effective GST rate is around 11.6% as explained by Mr. Bibek Debroy. So there has been a considerable difference in the revenue collection through indirect tax. That was done to incentivize not only the states to participate in the GST structure, but also to incentivize companies and firms and the economic actors to come into the GST fold, since it is something new. So this actually has been persistently happening for the last 2.5 years, but it has come to the fore right now because there has been a deceleration in economic growth. Because of the deceleration in economic growth, the governments both at the state and the centre are looking for revenues to kick up the economy. Mind you that the Reserve Bank recently actually did not cut the interest rate as many would have expected. So now it is incumbent upon the government to spend and spur the demand. So to spur the demand, you need money, and because of this tussle in the payments of GST, many states are not able to spend and kickstart the economy. There's another conundrum here. Now that the Reserve Bank is not enacting an expansionary monetary policy, it is incumbent upon the government, the central government, to actually do an expansionary policy in terms of more fiscal spending. Within this, how can you, given this scenario, how can you actually increase the rates of various or tinker with the slabs so as to increase the overall collection amount? Is a question that is before the government. So this is the state of play, but there are actually many teething issues that keep coming, which has been through there are way too many slabs, right? There are 5 slabs.
So we come to the teething issues and also, what can possibly be done and what's going to be worked out in the next GST meeting. But before that, let me bring in the other panelists as well. So, Badrinath, let me come to you now. Aren't these issues, thrashed out when the GST Council meets? This is going to be the 38th meeting of the GST Council later on this month. Aren't these issues discussed and thrashed out?
No. GST Council meetings are only for such issues. But the point is that if you have not paid release the funds that are taxable, the tax proceeds, the state share for last 4 months, then it's a serious issue, liquidity issue for the states. As per the GST Act, every 2 months at least, you have to release the proceeds. If you don't do that, then the states have every reason to protest or discuss, take the issue with the centre and come with some kind of a solution that needs to be brought about. The states have been protesting on this issue, especially the opposition ruled states, which have made a big issue out of it. Like Punjab has done it, Madhya Pradesh has done it, Kerala has done it.
West
In
Bengal.
fact, West Bengal has done it, Puducherry has done it, and all that. So point here is, especially for states like smaller states like Puducherry, the GST proceeds mean a lot. This is going to be almost 40% of the revenue or the state tax revenue. So if we don't release funds there, that means sometimes they could even end up not even paying the state government employees' salaries. So this is a big issue. And in fact, if, the Kerala finance minister says that he will take resort to what is that section, Article 131 under the constitution, and take the central government to the court. I mean, this is such a situation that means you are reaching a point where there is going to be some amount of distrust between the center and the state on the sharing of the revenue proceeds, GST proceeds, which is not a good sign whatsoever.
Okay, okay. So before we get to the bigger problem and before we widen the scope of the discussion, Dr. Pullarao, what is the way out for the present, in Banu's words, conundrum?
You see, we can take some advice from Mr. N.K. Singh, Finance Commission Chairman, who said the whole GST system has become asymmetrical. You know, it's just not gelling. There were expectations on how this tax would work. There were expectations of a growing economy. Tax collections would be there. There would be no problem in sharing revenues. But all of that didn't happen. So when there is asymmetry in a system, especially in a new system, rather than try patchwork and try to fix up these things in a small way, and as our friend said, avoid making them go to court, all of that, is it not time to have a serious review? Where I had nearly 2.5 years experience. It's a very welcome tax, one country, very well thought out, but there are glitches and it's not working in some way. How do you avoid these things? It's good time to review. Yes, have some short-term measures to get over all of this, but you must have a review. The other small thing I would like to say is you need to kickstart the economy. And perhaps it's not wise to raise taxes to kickstart the economy. Just don't forget, that's where the great American Depression started, when Herbert Hoover was president, and when Depression's first signs came, he increased taxes. Keynes and others brought out so many ideas on that you can't do that. I would really hope government would not raise taxes, but try to convince the states that this is a very temporary measure. In some way we'll make up this shortfall, but let us review the entire thing.
But when the states don't have money, that's what they're saying, how do you deal with this problem?
They have to find some other sources. Now, if you want me to say how the budget should be designed, I'll say don't go overhead on infrastructure. You're investing lakhs of crores on roads when there is good time for it. You can withdraw some of that, take care of the states, because this is a time where the GST system must work. The GST system must not collapse, but the GST system must be repaired, yet you must keep money flowing. So you have to do some creative budget work and avoid the serious dead ends which may come. Once there is asymmetry, and I'm quoting Mr. N.K. Singh, Finance Commission Chairman, you have to find ways to get rid of it from the body economic.
Okay.
Otherwise, you will have these problems at the next GST Council.
Okay, repair work is required. The government, the center should buy some time is what you're suggesting. Banu? Yeah, yes.
I don't think the states have that leeway.
Yeah, that's what I was coming to, yeah.
They don't have that leeway because every state virtually lives on shoestring budgets and you just don't have enough space at all. Fiscal space is absolutely not there. Second part is 4 months nobody can survive. Second part is it's not that states are making unreasonable demands. It is that logically whatever is need to be given to them out of the proceeds has to be given. And also the GST Act clearly says that the center will ensure that there is a tax revenue growth of about 14%. If there is any shortfall, center has to compensate. And this has to be done for 5 years. And you have only just started in 2017. It's just 2 years across. And now you're already, getting wobbly and you're not able to, manage the situation. And second part is that what the centers, states' biggest issue is that you have 50,000 crores in the, compensation pool which is undispersed. And here I'm crying hoarse, seeking, just pay me up. So there is some kind of issue where there seems to be some kind of a disturbance between the two, center and state. And secondly, you also must, let us not only take the state's point of view. Center has written a letter in November saying that, look, we are falling short of revenue because the GST collection is not doing very well. Thankfully, owing to the festive season, we have just seen a little pickup in the GST collection last month and this month. About 1 lakh crores plus. But the point is that, if there is a shortage of revenue, what is the way out? Is the big question. Second part is that, the center is asking states to come up with ideas to raise more revenue, mobilize more taxes at a time when the economy is doing bad. It's just 5%. And the RBI says that it could be anything between 4.5 and 5.4%. So this is unacceptable action.
Okay, kickstart the economy is what you're suggesting, and that's the best way to deal with this particular problem. Let's talk about those teething problems that you are talking about, Banu, in your opening remarks.
Quickly, I just want to clarify a couple of things. One is, I'm totally I think everybody would be in favor of quick disbursement of the money that is owed to the states. Mr. Sushil Modi, who's in the GST Council, he was actually mentioning that even Bihar was owed around 3,000 to 4,000 crore, and he was saying that it's probably a procedural or a technical issue that has stopped the payments. But hopefully that gets sorted. Couple of things. One, there is also a myth that is being created in the media that actually growth flows out of a room in North Block, okay, and everything is starts from there and goes on and infects everybody in India. So state governments actually have quite a lot of wherewithal with them to actually do something about their own economy. So if you look at 7 big states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, they have grown less than 7%. Okay, and there are many reforms. There are many issues under the state list and the concurrent list on which they have particular control. They can do something about it. For example, why not reform their state-owned enterprises? There are many states that own enterprises. Why not trim their bureaucracy? I mean, these are also opportunities, right? Every crisis presents an opportunity. They can actually look at it. Okay, this is my first point. Second is, we're talking about the teething issues. I actually have a feeling that this is how reforms in India happen. It is chaotic. It's not that we have this previous structure of n number of taxes with customs, excise, service charge, octroi, everything, and suddenly you become a one tax rate GST country. It's very hard, okay, So I think this is how reforms happen. So now from so many tax rates, we have simplified them. The cascading effect is removed. Now we have 5 rates. So hopefully there will be further reforms and we move towards a single rate. See, also we should be very little patient about this, because it takes 10 years or at least even more than that for this system to stabilize. Okay, this is experience of other countries. Take Canada, take Australia, take Singapore. They've actually taken quite a lot of time to so we should be a little more we should be a bit more patient. But yeah, but this I'm not saying that these issues should not be discussed. They should be discussed, but we should have some kind of a strategic perspective about it. Quickly, I'll just take a minute more. One is, see, when we started the reform, right, indirect taxes are not progressive in nature. Okay, so a farmer buys a biscuit, biscuit packet, he pays the same tax as a millionaire, right? But direct taxes are more progressive. People who are more fortunate and richer are taxed more compared to poorer people. We actually try to bring this progressive nature into indirect taxes as well. So people, the commodities that are used by people in day-to-day life, say milk, pulses, etc., they are not charged anything. Okay. So we are bringing a more progressive nature to the whole indirect tax structure. So this kind of thing creates problems, but I feel this is the only way reform happens, right? Reform happens progressively in India. So when now people are talking about converging these 5 rates into a single rate or three into 3 rates, and then move towards a single rate. I think this is how reforms happen, but we are particularly concerned about this right now because like there are this conundrum of like, can we increase these tax rates during the time of economic slowdown? That is what is causing this problem. But I'll just finish with a very small comment. I'm just wondering whether the RBI and the Finance Ministry are not talking to each other, because had they been, maybe like there would have been a rate cut, okay, and this would have given some space for the government to actually act on it. So like I'm wondering if the RBI is not communicating enough with the Finance Ministry and vice versa.
Okay, all right, Dr. Pulra. So as far as the tax base is concerned, it has widened, in the recent past. But yet the collections seem to be a big problem. Why is that so?
See, collection, the economy is not growing. Your taxes are to grow if the economy grows. If the economy is supposed to grow at 7-8% and is growing at 5%, there's a contraction. It is not merely in terms of the percentage, there's more caution. There's more money in small fixed deposits is not being circulated. Recently, the government has cut taxes to 15% corporate. And when it becomes effective, what experience based in other countries is, in a time like this, those businesses will not expand their production capacity or invest in you. They keep it in fixed deposits or they buy back their shares. So we are facing a situation. Is it stagflation? Is it secular rate of growth? All these positions are there. The government has to have multiple ways of tackling it. Now, in the letter quoted November, Government of India has asked states, what do you suggest? Shall we increase rates? Augmentation of revenue. That is the key word. Augmentation of revenue means you're going to increase the taxes. Is that politically viable? Will they do it? Will it have the required benefit? So these are questions which the government, RBI and other agencies must act together, because this is not simply that the GST Council is something different from the RBI. Unless there is a comprehensive tackling of this situation where there is less growth, the consumer demand is not picking up, there is an agrarian crisis, and yet you want to increase taxes, the GST, you want especially on those goods, the cess on cigarettes, tobacco, liquor, whatever comes into that. It has to be a very thoughtful process, and what are the consequences in the future. And there's, as I said at the beginning of this, is it not time for some repair? Or you just keep patching it up?
So what kind of repair do you suggest?
I would suggest they have to sit together and pare down some rules they have made for themselves. The taxes will progressively, the revenues will increase automatically, whatever be the thing. And states will get this. States were assured these incomes because some of their, big tax revenue givers have come under central ambit. Fair enough. But they have to come down to more realistic goals. There is a trade-off, as our friend Mr. Banu has said. It takes 10 years to stabilize this whole situation. Before it stabilizes, it shouldn't collapse. So there has to be a review, and there has to be some more practical mindset. Yes, pay the states their dues. As Mr. Pandinath has said, pay it. There's no doubt. You find the money and pay it from some other source to keep this idea going. But it is time for a review whether the rosy pictures painted on day 1, July, are really sustainable. Yes, it's a very good operational system, one tax, and there's so many bottlenecks. But I think you require a more serious review. And there's no harm in admitting we're going to look back and see where we faltered so that we can go ahead. One step back, 2 steps forward. There's no harm in that.
Okay, all right. So, Badri, let me bring you to the picture now. So, since we are talking about a review, since we are talking about repair, since we are talking about a better GST regime going forward, what is it that we need to address first when the GST Council meets later on this month?
See, I'm reminded of the Brazilian experience where GST brought down the entire government there and people were out on the streets against the GST regime there. So I only pray that such a thing doesn't happen in this country, because if we don't address the issue right now with the states and the center, we are opening up another door or another front in terms of tax reforms, which is not right going forward. Now, when we say how do we repair it, well, there should be reconciliation from both the sides. It shouldn't be that, okay, and no false prestige involved in, no, it's mine and it's mine. No, there's nothing there. Point is, how do we work a system out of it? My guess is that increasing the tax rate at this point of time is not the solution at all. Second part is that several exemptions were given when Mr. Arun Jaitley was the finance minister, and more than 23 items, there were exemptions were given. Should we end those exemptions? Should we review them? Is an issue the GST Council has to take a call. Second, now combining them into one single rate is the most ideal thing in the medium to long term. But at this point of time, you cannot attempt it. At this point of time, because there is so much of diversity in opinion. And as we have the experience of economic reforms from 91 onwards, here the reforms happen very slowly, and it has its own pace. You cannot hasten it up beyond a point. For instance, you have cut the corporate tax rates. The corporate tax rates have been cut, but to what avail? To what avail? I do understand that Madam Finance Minister doesn't have many options before her. The point is, you have cut the corporate tax rates at a time when your economy is not doing well because you want to spur the demand and growth. The point here is that you have given away about 60,000 crores in your revenues. And now you are crying wolf saying that I don't have money, please give me ideas. How do you balance this issue?
Okay.
This is an issue the GST Council has to take cognizance of.
Okay, all right.
And now you want states to fend for themselves? How can they do that?
Okay, so Banu, so what's the best way out really?
Yeah, so I actually humbly disagree with Mr. Badrinath. I actually feel quite, if we just don't miss the wood for the trees. I'm actually quite excited by the way the way the tax regime in India is progressing. The GST has been replacing an extremely messy system. We used to have in interstate borders, we used to have trucks standing for hours together to actually fill the octroi, right? So we sometimes forget the past quite easily. This is actually a very progressive tax. There is actually nobody that says that GST is not good for India. There are some alarmist projections, they quote examples of Brazil or Malaysia, but overall people are happy with the efficiency that GST has brought. But actually there are a few teething issues. One is there has been a compliance issue. This is actually one of the agenda items for the December 18th meeting. Okay, so in fact, couple of days ago, there has been a notification from the Ministry of Finance that if the GSTR Form 3B, which actually which has to be filled every month, if it is not filled for 2 consecutive months, your e-way bill will not be generated. So what it basically says that if you don't actually report your GST taxes properly, then you can't. So without an e-way bill, goods can't be transported, right? So they say that that will be stopped. Okay. So the reason why they are saying is there are actually 21 lakh GSTN IDs in India. Okay. Of these, around 3.5 lakhs, they have made transaction during the last 2 months, but they have not actually filled the Form 3B. Okay, so compliance is an issue. This is one place where states can actually do something. Okay, first. Second is there was actually when the GST was brought in, companies with less than 20 lakh turnover were exempted from GST. Okay, this was to make sure that they don't get hassled during that time. This has actually now become turned out into a different issue because companies that used to buy from these small enterprises are not buying from them because they don't get the input tax credit. Okay, so now these companies are kind of left in a lurch. They used to have this fake receipt which is not working now because the input tax credit thing has actually come. Another technology issue which could be really solved very soon is the GST is actually filled and the input tax is credited based on a notional number. Okay, and when the actual numbers don't match, actually there is a problem. Okay, and the IT systems have been struggling with it for a long time, and also because this there are actually 1,300 goods and 500 services that are actually coming into this regime, and they are filled into these 5 buckets. Okay, our lawmakers, the GST Council, has also been kind of tinkering with it. They've moved some from 28 to 18, and then some from 5% to 0, vice versa. Right. So there were around 230 goods and services that were in the 28% bucket. Now they were moved to now only 37%.
Sure.
So they've been tinkering with this, and this has actually caused some disruption. See, this is actually, I feel this is how it progresses. Okay, there are some technical issues that could be solved. This refund issues could be sorted, but overall the way GST has been proceeding, and overall the tax regime in India. Okay, right next, like we are going to get the recommendations of the 15th Finance Commission. The way it is progressing is very, very good. Like we are in for a this is how we modernize the economy. Right now, like we are feeling the pressure because the economic growth is low, but I think this is a good way forward.
Okay. Short on time. So, Dr. Pullara, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
You see, compliance, that's one of the very big problems. Why are they not being able to comply with these things? Because the kind of paperwork, the kind of attention required for small businesses is just impossible. As I said, it's 2.5 years. And it's a good time to review. Go into it fully. Why is the compliance system so elaborate, so detailed? You require chartered accountants, you require cost accountants, a whole bunch of them to do your work. And small firms are trembling under this tax. It's become a tedious affair. Government, and it's very easy for government to solve because it's not a revenue issue. The people will comply if it is made easy. While all this review is going on, it's time for review. One step forward, backward, or 2 steps forward. You find out what are the weaknesses in this, rectify it. Otherwise, the system will eventually revolt.
Okay.
That should not happen. Let us have better compliance through easier compliance.
Okay, all right. On that note, then, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that increase in the tax rate at this juncture is not a viable option and should not be done, is what the panelists are suggesting. GST needs review and repair work. That is the need of the hour, and also the states need to be compensated. Their share must be released at the earliest, is what the panelists are suggesting. There are definitely problems as far as the GST is concerned, but it's a system that is right for India, is the conclusion. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.